Well, there you have it, South Africa. The President has just concluded his response to the debate on the State of the Nation Address 2024, marking the end of the program of the State of the Nation Address. Over the last 3 days, 63 members, a total of 63 members of Parliament and the provincial legislatures have made their comments, their remarks and their rebuttals on the President's speech. This has been a great representation of our country's democracy and, of course, a wide variety of views and perspectives shared. And, of course, true to what our multi-party and constitutional democracy is about, all the parties that are represented in Parliament had the opportunity to critique the President's speech. They had the opportunity to analyze it. They had the opportunity to say where the President probably should have placed more emphasis on. But we also have to bear in mind that the State of the Nation Address is not just a once-off session. It actually marks the beginning of a series of conversations, of planning conversations that are now unlocked. What is now unfolding, what is next? On Wednesday next week, we will be receiving the budget speech from the Minister of Finance, who will be basically outlining the allocations, the proposed allocations for government's program of action in the year ahead. And of course, we also know that, provinces will also they will also begin on Thursday. I think we're getting our first State of the Province address on Thursday next week, where premiers of provinces will begin to also deliver their State of the Province addresses, of course, speaking to key aspects that the President has raised in his State of the Nation address. And again, it is also important to emphasize that the President, when he delivers his State of the Nation address, he will deliver the address giving us broad strokes, and thematic areas that the broader state machinery should be focusing on, and that the three spheres of government should be focusing on. And then from there on, we know that we're going to get more detail coming through from the budget process. After the budget speech has been delivered, the budget vote process, we will now hear those members of the executive delivering their plans. Their plans will be unpacked by portfolio committees, by portfolio committees in Parliament, to ensure that, the allocations, the proposed allocations, they still speak to, the National Development Plan, and that they speak to, the plans as outlined by the President in the current financial year or in the year ahead. And of course, we must also be reminded that all of what the President has spoken to us about in his State of the Nation address on the 8th of February, it still speaks to the National Development Plan. It still speaks to those to the medium-term strategic framework. It still speaks to those 7 priorities of the medium-term strategic framework, in order to ensure that as government continues to plan, that planning is done in a coherent manner. But it's also important to just quickly reflect on some of the key issues that the President the key issues as raised by the President in his speech. He started off by, of course, reminding South Africans that this year marks exactly 30 years since the advent of our democracy in 1994, when ordinary South Africans who were previously disenfranchised, for the first time had the opportunity to vote. And it has been 30 years. In a few weeks, we will be celebrating that extraordinary milestone. And of course, many people have got a lot to say about, whether we've made progress. But indeed, if we're looking at if we're looking at the Constitution as our starting point, if we're looking at the various pieces of legislation that have been passed, obviously we are on the right trajectory. But implementation has been highlighted as a major issue of concern, to ensure that as government actually legislates, as the legislative sector, legislates, that those key pieces of legislation must find expression through proper planning and proper implementation. And of course, we must also be reminded of the key statistics that came out of the President's speech. The President spoke about, the social assistance package that is currently available, and that has been made available to South Africans who are unable to look after their families, and that is the vulnerable, the poor and vulnerable, the unemployed, in the form of, the social grants. And as per what the President has reported, we have more than 26 million South Africans who are receiving the social assistance grants in the form, of course, the child support grant and various other grants that are available to them. With that said, we will be getting a few members of the executive who are here, who will be with us to just give us their reactions of the President's speech. Do stay tuned.
We should not give in to those who resist the responsibility that the Constitution places on us to correct the injustices of the past and fundamentally transform our economy and society. We must remind these people of the obligation that the Constitution places on the state to progressively realize the rights of everyone to housing, healthcare, food, water, social security, safety, and education. By the same measure, we should not allow anyone to diminish vital democratic institutions, to denigrate our judiciary, or to challenge the constitutional authority of this Parliament. We should not give in to those who seek to divide our nation, to incite violence and undermine our democracy. As in the past, as in the future, the people of South Africa should stand together against any attempt to reverse the achievements of our democracy.
Welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. I do now have the honor of being joined in studio by the Minister for Water, the Portfolio for Water, Date Senzo Mchunu. Minister, welcome to the platform, and thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. What are your reactions on the President's response today?
Well, overall, I think the President spent a lot of time thinking about the last 30 years and picking and choosing what would make a broadly comprehensive and accommodating kind of a statement for that kind of a period. You start with the period of Mandela, the 5 years, where South Africa was dealing largely with reconciliation.
Absolutely.
Where there had been absolutely none. And then you go to a period where certain things around development and building people and building the country begins. And then you go to a period which unfortunately started with a global meltdown, 2008. Afterward, started building the economy, among other things, reaching about 6% of growth, although there was very little employment,
Yes.
or rather no matching employment. But the mood was positive. And then you go up to 2014, with still climbing, and a few things that happened around HIV/AIDS, around higher and primary education, and things moving up until we then come across at the end of 2019, while getting higher and higher in terms of hope. You come across the economic meltdown as a result of COVID-19. There was not just a period of economic meltdown, it was destructive.
Absolutely.
Because you had to close doors on a number of businesses, shutting down prospects of growth for people, their employment, their personal growth, and their almost all avenues. It became dark for 2 years in the country, actually for more than 2 years.
For more than 2 years.
And only last year, the greater part of 2 can you start saying we started going out and about. But what did you see down there? It was destruction and mayhem. You needed to put pieces together. And that's no easy journey. It's no easy journey because you didn't stop and then start. When you stopped because of COVID, it was destruction, things falling apart and so on. So the last 30 years, in a number, is 30 years. And then if you close your eyes, you would say, hey, there's quite a period. And then you would say, what has happened is not enough in terms of taking South Africa to higher heights and growing. Yet, if you audit it, if you detail it, if you look seriously through, you can see that we have moved a long way. We are a constitutional state.
Absolutely.
With relative stability and certainty. When do you have elections? When do you not have elections? National, provincial, local. You know when do you have your budgets? When do you open your parliament? That's stability, that's growth, that is positive. Such that we had never seen that before because we didn't knew we were not part of it.
Indeed, Minister.
And the challenges and positives.
Yeah. And with the President, of course, also drawing the comparison to where South Africa was prior to 1994, talking about the legacy of apartheid, we're talking about more than 350 years of colonialism and apartheid and that impact and that legacy, that it doesn't take 30 years to reverse that, and that is what you're speaking to.
That is exactly in real terms. Because if you start auditing things from 1994 backwards, you would see that you are talking about decades.
Absolutely.
You're talking about 340 years.
Yes.
Now, there was 340 years of destruction, generation after generation, if you are black, in terms of the policies then, with the colonialists handing us over to apartheid people. They themselves doing their own destruction. And remember, each and every human being in a country is an asset.
Absolutely.
And if you destroy that person, you are likely to be destroying an asset, no matter how you undermine them, whether educated or not. People are an asset. Look at China, look at US. These are big nations numerical. Look at India. It becomes positive. It becomes a plus rather than in the main, rather than being a disadvantage of the country. So we are a nation. We are growing steadily. We are now at 62 million. And therefore, we must start thinking, how do we turn these 62 million people to become an asset? And we're hoping that in the next 5 years, we're not going to experience another COVID-19, the most destructive, and other destabilization things, because it's when the nation is stable, when the nation has a direction, that we are able to focus on development. Absolutely. As opposed to looking at other things. Of course, things like crime, especially rape, especially housebreakings,
gender-based violence,
car hijackings. Those are the most upfront that we need to knock back and so that they subside. These things are caused by human beings, and other human beings can reverse them, force these others to reverse that, and we need the power of security in the country That is very important and very much upfront. On the other hand, we need to build our economy and create jobs. But for that, we need electricity. We need to focus on this without winking. We just need to look at this and look at it and work very hard and sweat, and then generate to stability and a flow that can't be disturbed. It's only then that the economy will start ticking up, when you have an undisturbed flow of electricity, so that people can run their businesses.
Indeed. Minister, unfortunately, that is where we have to leave it for now, but thank you very much for sharing those insights and those reactions. That is, of course, the Minister for Water, responsible for the water portfolio, sharing his reactions in terms of the President's speech as was delivered on the 8th of February, and, of course, the President's reply today. Do stay tuned. We do have more reactions coming up.
To support growth in the mining sector, we are moving ahead with the modernization of our mining rights licensing system and are launching an exploration fund to support emerging miners and exploit new mineral deposits. Through this, mining, which has been the bedrock on which the South African economy was built, will once again become a sunrise industry. Participation of previously disadvantaged black people is increasing. Black ownership now stands at approximately 39% when compared to just 2% in 2004. This is progress that is being made, allowing black people to participate in a key industry in our economy.
Welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. As indicated earlier, we are still getting reactions from our members of the executive who are here to just share their perspectives on not only the President's speech, but particularly the President's response today. I do now have the pleasure and honor of being joined by the Minister for Small Business, Mayor Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. Minister, thank you very much for making the time, and welcome to the platform.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to the engagement.
Fantastic. Just tell us, just as a starting point, what are your reactions of the President's reply today, especially after the robust discussions and all of the wide-ranging comments that were made from all the parties that are represented in Parliament, and with obviously culminating into the President's response today? What's your reaction?
Well, I think the reaction was good, specifically because the President was able to put everything into perspective. Most of the people have chosen to deliberately ignore the context of what his speech was centered around, giving account of the work that we have done over the 30 years. And of course, others wanted us to just focus on this administration. But as he explained, it is important to bring everybody up to speed by explaining where do we come from, so that when you judge us as the government, you judge us on realistic terms. I think he did well on that. And today, everyone who was saying Tin Swallow is not there, it's fake and whatever, everybody was proven wrongly by just sampling, bringing a group of young people that volunteered, by the way. Because when they listened to the debate, they said, President, they don't believe that we exist. We are coming forward. We're going to show them that we are grateful for the work that has been done. And for me, that was the highlight, to say, despite the challenges that we have, as the President has explained, but there are people who are willing to give testimony to the work that we are doing. And of course, at the center of that is appreciating the different views by the different members of parliament. And this is what builds us and makes us very different as the governing party, to say, we're not only listening to ourselves, we are prepared to take advice from those who are criticizing us constructively. Because ours is to ensure that everybody has been voted into power in this country is given an opportunity to make an input. We are government, but we do consider everyone's opinion. And President Ramaphosa, I believe, he managed in his response to bring everybody on board to showcase to South Africa that if we work together, we can do more.
And isn't that just the lifeblood of a constitutional democracy? Because now we've got all these parties that are represented in Parliament who can freely, they've got freedom of speech to actually say, President, you could have focused on this issue and that issue. And to top it all off, the President didn't just paint a glossy picture. He also spoke to the challenges that we are facing as a country. But let's maybe zone in on your portfolio in particular. We know that the Ministry of Small Business is so critical in terms of transforming the economy and restructuring the economy. And we cannot build jobs, we cannot create jobs without, small business. Talk to us about the significance of the President's speech with regards to advancing, economic transformation in the country.
Well, from the onset when he delivered his State of the Nation address, he spoke to critical programs that I'm going to mention or re-emphasize. That of the country that is going to be embarking on a massive infrastructure project. And therefore, the benefit by the small and medium enterprises in that project is what he emphasized on. The second aspect is us dealing with the challenges that are faced by the SMMEs, the red tapes that we talk about. And then he made reference to the bills, because we can want to remove challenges, but it's not something that you do over just one word. There's legislation that is in place. Therefore, you need to repeal or include certain aspects that must give the department the authority, including the ecosystem that we're working in. And this is one of the things that people take for granted. When we talk about the red tapes, as President explained that on that day, on the work that we've done, again, we're looking at matters that cut across several departments, including spheres of government. Now, that work requires proper coordination, which is what the department is established to do. Now, without a legislation that gives the department those powers, it is not able to carry its mandate effectively. This is why President appointed Mr. Ngosi, but of course from our side bringing the legislation, but at the center of it, as President explained again, is ensuring that we act now on those that we can be able to resolve. The issue of availing financing for small businesses,
very critical.
President spoke about it. The issue of addressing the township and rural infrastructure, President spoke about it. And this is what made us to be happy as the portfolio to say, at least the critical things are being attended to. At the center of that is the crime that is experienced by small and medium enterprises. Unlike big businesses, they're not able to afford all the other security interventions
Indeed.
they can provide. The issue of load shedding has been hitting hard on small businesses. President did give account of the initiatives by government in terms of addressing through the minister in the presidency, but also to say we are providing interventions. And for me, that was something to take home and say there's a lot that we must build on as the responsible department that is looking at the interest of the small and medium enterprises.
The President also touched on the amount of money, I think in the amount of about 500 billion that has already been raised through the investment conferences. How does the small business department fit into that space in terms of ensuring that as these investment commitments are being made, that that money can actually be channeled to these small and medium enterprises that are emerging and is part and parcel of, transforming the economy?
Well, one of the things that can really give meaningful participation for the department in such initiatives is a coordinated plan, as I mentioned earlier. And this is why we came up with a National Integrated Small Enterprise Development Framework. We call it a master plan of the master plans, to say there are these billions of rands in a particular sector, which is meant for big business, as you find Minister Patel coming up with master plans for the different sectors. all we do is to say, for the small and medium enterprises in that sector, these are the areas. We've gone to an extent of identifying, not word by word, but product by product, that have been submitted to say, now at least leave this space for the SMMEs to participate in this area. Is it done throughout the sector or the ecosystem? No. As things stand, there isn't much adherence to it, which is why through the business licensing bill that we'll be bringing in the next administration, now we are gazetting the policy, we're beginning to say the minister therefore must be given powers to, in consultation with the Minister of DTIC, Home Affairs and National Treasury, to say on these specific items and sectors, let them be completely reserved for the small and medium enterprises. When you do that, you are therefore forcing the big business, even if they say, we already have our suppliers, as we know that there's lots of monopolization in our country, but now we're trying to engage them to say, let's break that value chain and be able to bring new entrants into the space. And I want to tell you here, the big business has been very willing to do that with us, to an extent that we agree that on their enterprise supplier development will be going hand in hand with CEDA, our agency, in order to make sure that we build the entrepreneurs that can be able to respond to the quality that is required by those that must contract or accommodate them in their value chain. So it is something that we know that there's 500 billion. Are we already in the different sectors? Which is why capacitating the department was critical for us, to have sector specialists, because we've been operating with general public admin as staff. So we said, we can't be dealing with the work that we deal with. We can't shift in terms of the unemployment that we see in the country and respond to what the National Development Plan says unless we have sector specialists. We invest a lot in research and innovation so that we know what are the trends in agriculture. And therefore, when we identify space, if we come to you, for example, if you have a clothing brand, when we say, all we want from you, can you give us space to provide you with patterns? We would have identified a niche for the SMMEs. So we are going for that route of specialization to say, let SMMEs focus on certain areas. And if that happens, it doesn't matter if whoever that is trading is in South Africa or outside South Africa, but if they come from South Africa, at least they will be able to open more market access for the entrepreneurs that were responsible.
Indeed, and that also speaks to the issue of localization and ensuring that as you identify the sectors as well, you also know which provinces, which districts, which localities, so that you have clarity about exactly where this money will be going and the economies and the local economies that are supposed to be activated in the process as well. But as you conclude, Minister, tell us, what do you think is the legacy of the 6th administration as you conclude?
Well, because we continue with the work that has been started by others, it's really difficult to say this one I can single out, because we continue with the work that is there in place. But of course, you just mentioned the lots of billions on investment that have been brought in this country. Indeed. And this is something that has happened during the 6th administration. When Minister Nzimande was making the debate, he spoke about the numbers, the billions that we've increased towards the students, including ensuring that we provide for the missing middle who could not afford to access NSFAS, but at the same time their parents could not afford. There's many interventions. If I'm now going to be telling you that the NCOP is busy with the public hearings to make sure that they finalize the National Small National Small Enterprise Amendment Bill that seeks to establish an office of the Ombudsman that must champion the interest of entrepreneurs, because we've seen them being victimized many times. This is the legacy of the 6th administration. I can go on and go on. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, the success that we are bringing, is a legacy of the 6th administration. What we're beginning to see, to say, let us reindustrialize South Africa, the localization that you are referring to say, it can be correct that we continue to get stuff from other countries, even when we can. And this is why we said, on the industrialization plan, let's make sure that we fund or finance those industrialists. Hence, he was talking about 1,000 industrialists that have been supported this financial year. The issue is, how do you leverage on the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement? How do you leverage on the BRICS assist that we've brought on board? And there's so many other partnerships. I mean, I've never seen private sector so cooperative in terms of saying, government, we're willing to partner with you, roll out the infrastructure that we have.
Fantastic. Minister, unfortunately, that is where we have to leave it for now, but I want to thank you very much for making the time to be with us this afternoon.
Thank you so much, and looking forward to another engagement.
Fantastic. That is, of course, the Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. She is the Minister for Small Business, sharing her insights and giving us a broader picture in terms of the economic transformation trajectory of the country, of course, zoning in to some of the key, what we can call legacy and highlights and accomplishments of this constitutional democracy. With that, I want to thank you for watching Parliament TV since last week, Thursday, since we started with our build-up on, prior to the President delivering his speech. It has been our pleasure to bring you live coverage of the State of the Nation Address 2024. With that said, goodbye.